I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Welcome to the Sumter School District April 12, 2020 board meeting. All persons wishing to attend the virtual meeting may do so via YouTube Sumter School District board meeting and Sumter School District Facebook page. Due to COVID-19 and in compliance with recent public health orders, no member from the public will be able to attend the meeting in person. This meeting is held in accordance with the Freedom of Information Act. The news media has been notified, and a copy of the agenda has been made available to the public. The mission of Sumter School District is to equip students to be responsible, successful, and productive citizens in a global society. Sumter School District develops and cultivates competitive students who embrace diversity, act responsibly, and contribute positively to society. The board members are Barbara R. Jackson, Area 7 Chairwoman, J. Frank Baker, Seat 8, Vice Chair, Darrell McGaney, Area 5 Clerk, Ryan L. Alston, Area 1, Cheryl P. Ray, Area 2, Matthew McLeod, Area 3, Johnny B. Hilton, Area 4, Gloria Rose Lee, Area 6, Sean T. Reagan, Area 9. Robin Mill is the Deputy Director of Installation Support, Shore Air Force Base Representative. Dr. Penelope E. Mark Knox is our Superintendent, and Amy Hanson is our Administrative Manager. This meeting is called to order. Good evening, and thank you for joining this meeting. My fellow trustees and I want to thank you for your continued support of Sumter School District. We are now well into spring, and we hope that our staff and our students, as well as their families, had a restful break, found some time to relax and recharge, and are now ready to finish the 2020-2021 school year #Sumter Strong. Upon consensus with no objection, the agenda will stand approved as written. Are there any objections? Hearing none, the agenda is approved. Dr. Mark Knox, I believe you have some very special guests to bring before the board. Will you now share the information about this evening's recognition?
So thank you, Dr. Jackson. And so good evening to our Sumter School District community and to our Sumter School District staff. As we continue to navigate through these challenging times associated with the pandemic that we've been faced with, I just wanted to take the opportunity to say thank you to all of our staff for the hard work and diligence that they've put forward so far. And tonight, I have several of those individuals who have been asked, and they have no idea why they are on this call, but I have several individuals who we've invited to join us, and I asked that you join us for a very special reason. And so at this time, I hear the door opening, so Ms. Miller will come in and share this opportunity with me. As we, as the superintendent and as the board, and as Ms. Miller are present, we just like to say thank you to the Department of Finance, During these challenging times, we recognize that you've worked above and beyond the call of duty. You've filled in where there were areas that needed to be fulfilled to continue to keep the district running. And oftentimes we don't recognize those who are behind the scenes, but you are truly behind the scenes and the backbone to the work that we complete each and every day. And so I just want to publicly say thank you, and then to recognize you individually for the work that you've done. So at this time, Ms. Miller, would you like to read off the names of your department who will be recognizing with this virtual certificate that you can put on their desks since they're still here?
Actually, yes ma'am, they are still here. 3 of them are diligently working to run payroll this evening. First, I'm looking here, we have got Judy Overstreet, going above and beyond, exceeding expectations. Next, we have Angel Mickens, going above and beyond and exceeding. Next, we have Lois Horn, going above and beyond, exceeding expectations. And then lastly, Pam Bordeaux, going above and beyond and exceeding expectations. These 4 ladies right here, not only every month are making this happen, but they faced significant challenges during the month of March and were able to ensure that all district employees were paid timely, even during that time. So we appreciate you and thank you for everything you do every day.
And again, I stated it a few moments ago, but I can't say it enough. I just want to thank you. Oftentimes I come through finance and you all see me and freeze sometimes thinking you've done something wrong, but oftentimes it's just to acknowledge you and to let you, you're smiling, so I confirm, you confirm that. Just to thank you for the work that you do, and you're always working, and so I appreciate you, so thank you again. And so this next individual is going to be recognized for just looking out for children and putting them first. And so I'm just going to share this story with you because one, it's factual, but it also gives us an idea of what our staff goes through each and every day to ensure our children are safe and can learn. And so Ms. Smith, where'd she go? I thought she was, oh, okay, they moved. So Ms. Smith, I just want to take this opportunity to, one, tell your story, but to personally thank you for what you did a few weeks ago. And so while students were being transported home a couple of weeks ago, you know those big old log trucks that carry the logs on the back? One of them came loose and hit the windshield of our bus. And that bus was being driven by Ms. Smith. And the first thing she said out of her mouth when staff arrived on the scene is, I had to make sure my children were safe. In the midst of that turmoil, she focused on children. But I need to understand that not only do we focus on children, but we focus on you as well. So I just want to thank you with our board, with our community, and recognizing you for what you did. I truly appreciate you being safe, but I also am grateful that you're here for me to recognize you. So we're going to present you as well, Ms. Smith, with a recognition for what you've done for our children and for Sumter School District, and to let you know how much we thoroughly appreciate you and your leadership. So Sam, you want to read this for her?
I would like to say first that Ms. Smith has 16 years as a driver. She's a mother, grandmother, and she cares about not only herself, but those that are around her. And she proved that particular day, and she does that all the time. And we're so proud of her. And it reads, Sumter School District Board of Trustees Certificate of Award to Shirley Smith for exceeding expectations, putting children first, hashtag Sumter Strong. Congratulations.
Thank you, Ms. Smith. Mr. Myers has your certificate. I'd make sure you get it, because knowing him, he'll put it on his wall and scratch your name off and put his on. But it is truly for you, and just thank you for what you do.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Ms. Smith.
Thank you, Dr. Martin, for those recognitions. I think they're very good at this time. Okay, we're down now to, we had an added part to our agenda. We're down now to public participation. The board is pleased to offer time on the agenda for public participation. The procedure for submission of comments has been shared via the district website. As a reminder, submissions are due by the Wednesday prior to each regular monthly meeting. At this time, I will open the floor not to exceed 15 minutes for the reading of the previously submitted comments. Ms. Shelley Galloway will be doing the reading for us. Thank you, Ms. Shelley.
You're welcome. Good evening, Board Chairwoman Barbara Jackson and Vice Chairman Frank Baker and members of the board. We received 2 public participation. The first was from Ashley Johnson, and she wanted to encourage the board to continue virtual for all students 2021-2022 school year. The second public participation was received via a Google form by Charles Smith, and he wrote, "Why is it continually all right for the district to throw money to the teachers and give the school board raises when they are all at a livable salary? The building services staff, as well as school bus drivers, are making nowhere near a livable salary. How can the school board be okay with this kind of thinking and think very little of those that keep the schools running?" And those were the only 2 that we received.
Okay, I'd like to let the individuals know that their concerns or their comments will be addressed within the next 10 days by the board. So they are to expect a response from us within the next 10 days. Thank you, Ms. Galloway. We appreciate that. We're now down,
May we get a copy of those?
yes,
Thank you.
we will certainly make sure you get a copy, okay? We're down now to board communication. Trustees, I invite you to share any announcements you may have at this time.
Excuse me.
They will, do we have any announcements at this time, any board members? Yes, Dr. Lee.
Good evening, everyone. I just wanted to say that I had opportunity to visit various schools, and I wanted to send a shout out to them. On March the 22nd, I visit Wilder, and I'd like to send a shout out to Principal Wright and his staff. I visit Bates with Dr. Hunter and her staff. On Wednesday the 23rd, I visited Lakewood with Principal McKnight and their staff. Lamira with Dr. Canty and her staff. On March the 29th, I visited Alice Drive. A shout out to Principal Presley and Sumter High to Principal Pearson. I really had a great time walking through the schools and getting to actually see some of the great things that they do there. And there were days when I did get there when some of the students were there. So again, I wanted to say shout out to everyone for doing a great job virtually as well as students being in the classroom. Everything went well, and I look forward to visiting the rest of the schools.
Thank you, Dr. Lee. Any others?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
This past Wednesday during the spring break, my wife and I, we were down at the beach and found out that Lakewood High School was playing in a baseball tournament down there. And they were playing North Myrtle Beach, and we went to the game to watch them. And I just wanted to say that they represented Sumter School District very well.
Thank you, thank you. Little fun with vacation, looking after our children.
Yes, ma'am.
That's okay, thank you. Anyone else? Hearing none, we're now down to committee reports. We will now move, and I want to inform you that the Citizen Advisory Committee will meet on April 29th at 6 p.m. And this will be a virtual meeting. Dr. Mark Knox and I are looking forward to facilitating this meeting. Are there any additional committee reports? Yes, Mr. Austin.
Madam Chair, I would just like to announce that the Policy Committee will be meeting virtually on April 22nd at 6 p.m. here at the district office.
Okay, thank you.
Is this when you
Yes.
want our recommendations from our committees? Recommendations from the committees?
Yes.
The Finance Committee met March the 30th, and we had two recommendations. One was that the proposed budget timeline that was presented to us be presented to the full board at tonight's meeting, and then also that the proposed budget for the ESSER 2 funds be presented. I think we gave a date of the April 26th meeting, but I guess that would depend on when you completed that and had the guidelines for those funds. Okay?
Thank you, Mrs. Ray. Finance, anyone else? Okay. Dr. Hilton, since the committee reports have been given, is our board legislative contact. Are you prepared to provide a legislative update?
Yes, ma'am.
Do so, sir.
I've got a little cold, so I apologize if I start coughing up. Please forgive me. This past Thursday, the South Carolina Board of Economic Advisors voted to increase the revenue forecast for the current fiscal year. Due to the unknown impact of the pandemic on the economy, the estimate was reduced back in November by $803 million. But they raised the estimate back $610 million this past Thursday. With the adjustment to the current fiscal year estimate, the state projects to end the current fiscal year with a budget surplus of $646 million. Tomorrow, the House Education and Public Works Committee is set to take up the Senate resolution directing school districts to offer in-person 5-day-a-week instruction. After failing several times this past week to get the full House to take up the resolution needs to pass out of committee to be taken up by the full House. Other provisions in this same bill are a requirement that districts offer 5-day in-person classroom instruction to students for the next school year, 21-22, a provision to allow teachers who retired on or before April 19, 2019 to return to work and earn up to $50,000 annually, and a provision that prohibits districts from assigning teachers to instruct students simultaneously in person and virtually unless it is, quote, reasonable and necessary due to extreme and unavoidable circumstances. However, districts must give those teachers additional pay if they are teaching both virtual and instructional and in-person instruction simultaneously. The House Education K-12 Subcommittee is scheduled on tomorrow to take up the Senate bill that revises the state accountability system that dissolves duly elected boards in districts declared to be in a state of an emergency. They are also scheduled to take up a bill that requires high school students to complete coursework in personal finance rather than the existing economics course requirements for graduation, and to make these provisions applicable to students entering the 9th grade in the 2022-23 school year. In addition, the House Medical, Military, Public, and Municipal Affairs Committee on this Wednesday will consider a bill to authorize school volunteer personnel who've been trained by a licensed registered school nurse or healthcare professional to administer glucagon, insulin, or both to a student in an emergency situation. The House Motor Vehicle Subcommittee will consider a bill to require school buses to be equipped with 3-point lap and shoulder seat belts under certain conditions. The Senate Education Committee will consider a bill that passed out of subcommittee this past week to enact the Student Identification Card Suicide Prevention Act. This bill would require public schools, public and private institutions of higher learning that issue student ID cards to print the telephone number for the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline on the back of the ID card. The House, the full House, has passed a K-12 bill revising eligibility requirements for the state life scholarship. to include, among other things, requiring students during their senior year in high school to earn at least 1 credit in math or computer science and 1 credit in English or language arts, which may be accomplished by dual enrollment or beginning the 2025 school year. The bill was further amended to exempt seniors with a cumulative GP grade point average of 4.0 or better from this requirement. The House also voted to concur with the Senate's amendment to a joint resolution temporarily waiving the requirement that homeschool students sit out 1 full school year before participating excuse me, in public school sports or other interscholastic activities. The House also approved for 3rd reading a bill directing each school district to make certain tests available, which include the AP test, PSAT, pre-ACT, SAT, ACT, South Carolina Ready, SC Passing, and of course, an Aspire, and Ready to Work, available to homeschool students if the tests are available to students in the district. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Hoover. Thank you very much. Okay, we're now down to the Superintendent's Report. Dr. Mark Knox, please proceed with the items listed under the Superintendent's Report to include the tour of Sumter School District as well as the Office of Finance 2021, 2022 budget discussion.
So good evening again, Chairwoman Dr. Jackson, Vice Chairman Dr. Baker, and members of the Sumter School District Board and community. I want to just echo the sentiments that was shared a few moments ago by Mr. McLeod, as the reports that we usually receive from our students actually put us in such a positive light. So I want to thank you, Mr. McLeod, for sharing your observations of our students as they participated in the event down in Myrtle Beach. So thank you for the recognition. I also want to piggyback on something that Dr. Hilton just shared, and that's the transition for our school district to go return 5 days face-to-face. At the beginning of the pandemic, it has always been our intent to return back to 5 days a week face-to-face instruction. As we know, that's the best way in order for us to educate our children. As we are getting into a space where our teachers and our staff are being vaccinated, we are ready to begin the process of transitioning our children back to school. On April the 19th, as indicated in the correspondence and as indicated on our website, our school district will return 5 days a week face-to-face for all of our students. While our students are returning, we still will continue to have the option of our parents selecting that our students can remain virtual should they so desire, in hopes that they've also communicated this with our schools. The reason we continue to send out surveys is to ensure that we have the most appropriate numbers and staff to meet the needs of our children as we continue to move forward. And while we are receiving vaccinations, students from age 16 on up are receiving vaccinations, as well as our staff. It is most important that we continue to implement those mitigating factors that continue to prevent us from spreading the coronavirus. And so that means that when our students return, we ask that they continue to remain 6 feet apart when they're on the bus, while they continue to wear their mask, wash their hands and sanitize their hands regularly. But parents and students, if you are not feeling well, please make sure that you stay home during that time. And so we want to thank our community for your flexibility and for your understanding. And while we know that none of the decisions that we've made are actually something that everyone agrees with, but understand that what we've done is to ensure the safety and well-being of our staff and our community, as well as our children. As a team, we'll continue to monitor the data here in Sumter School District, and we'll continue to do our part in making sure that we safeguard the instructional environment. On April the 1st, we began the process again of open enrollment, which lasts between April the 1st and April the 30th. This is serving as a reminder, as the purpose of open enrollment is to increase students' access to educational opportunities within the school district. A request must be made to attend a school that has an academic program that is not available at the school for which a child is zoned to attend. Enrollment opportunities are also based on the capacity of the school. While those open enrollment processes are still in place, we always will keep in the forefront the enrollment at each school to ensure that our schools are not overcrowded. And to continue with the recognition of the positive events that are taking place within the school district, I want to again recognize Millwood Elementary School as being named a statewide 2021 award finalist for the Dick and Tunky Riley Award for School Improvement Council Excellence, which recognizes the significant contributions made to public education by local SIC members. The winner of the 2021 Riley Award will be selected from this year's finalists by an independent panel of reviewers and announced during a virtual award ceremony scheduled in April. So kudos to you, Dr. Leach, and the staff at Millwood Elementary School. To continue recognizing the work here in the school district, the National World War II Museum in New Orleans has named Derek Prince of Crestwood High School as a 2021 Billy Michael Student Leadership Award recipient. The national honor is awarded annually to one student in every state who has maintained a strong record of volunteerism, demonstrates school and community activism, and helps implement creative solutions to recognize problems. Each honoree will be recognized in a virtual manner at the museum's American Spirit Awards program, which will take place on June 18th, 2021. So kudos to you again, Derek Prince of Crestwood High School, for a job well done. Congratulations to Caitlin Dubkowski, a teacher at Alice Drive Middle School. She was named the Swamp Fox chapter of the Air Force Association Teacher of the Year. And I'll repeat that because that's a mouthful. The Swamp Fox chapter of the Air Force Association Teacher of the Year. As being recognized under this prestigious award, she will receive a $500 award and will compete for the state level honor. Caitlin is an impressive STEM teacher and a valuable asset to our community. So congratulations to you, Caitlin, for a job well done. There are 3 Sumter School District teachers who were chosen to receive Education of the Year awards presented by the Bank of Clarendon. The elementary award recipient, Miss Mary Van Natter of Wilder Elementary. The middle school recipient is Cornelius Blanding of Chestnut Oaks Middle School. And the high school recipient is Adrian Wilkins of Sumter High. This award recognizes those educators who excel both inside and outside of the classroom. Engagement in the community is of extreme importance to the Chamber of Commerce, which is why these awards are so important to them. So kudos to our teachers for representing Sumter School District. And as we continue to celebrate, April is the month of the military child. I want to take the opportunity just to thank Shaw for trusting us in this partnership, as we know that in embracing our children who are a part of the military or the Air Force, it's most important that they receive the support necessary as they continue to transition from state to state or school to school. It's most important to have a solid foundation for our children. And as Sumter School District, we are committed to doing that. So we would like for you to join us on April the 15th by wearing purple. Yes, I need you to look through your closet now to begin finding purple to wear in 3 days for April the 15th as we celebrate our military children. And so I expect to see you all on social media showing your purple and showing your pride and commitment to our children. And to help celebrate the resilience, creativity, and outstanding efforts of our students and staff, on Monday, April the 19th, which is also our first day back 5 days a week face-to-face, we will celebrate, as we did last year, by having Sumter Strong Day. On April 19th, we ask everyone in our community, our business partners, and our school district employees and our students to show your pride in Sumter School District by wearing blue. So you have 2 tasks, purple on April 15th and blue on April the 19th. And again, this is in recognition of Sumter Strong Day. Please make sure you tag us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, #SumterStrong at Sumter, South Carolina Schools. At this time, this concludes the Superintendent's Report or tour of Sumter. And now we will go into the presentation of the budget timeline. Oh, I missed one, and that wasn't intentional. So I missed one. So Dr. Staggers, I see you smiling. I will never forget you. So that is a slip on my behalf. But I want to thank you for joining us. So for those of you who have not met Dr. Staggers is the phenomenal president at Morris College here in Sumter School District. And as we continue to build our partnerships and build that gateway for our children prior to kindergarten, as we plan to have them to be college, workforce, and or military ready and career ready, we want to make sure that everyone sees and recognizes those persons who lead the work. So at this time, Dr. Staggers, I would like for you to introduce yourself to our communities and share with us the work that you do in Morris and how important it is for all of us.
Thank you, Dr. Superintendent Mark Knox. Good evening to everybody. To Chairwoman Dr. Barbara Jackson, and Vice Chair, and all of the other members of the board. Thank you so much for giving me a few minutes to say hello to you and have a few minutes to talk with you. I had a wonderful time with Superintendent Martin Knox a couple of weeks ago, reading with the superintendent. We read a wonderful book together on Clara Barton to some of your students. And my background is, I'm trained as an English secondary teacher. And I started teaching, my first year, professional year of work was actually as an English teacher in a high school. And from there on into higher education. But thank you for a few moments. Forest College is here in our community making a wonderful contribution. And one of the things that we pride ourselves on is making a contribution to our community. And by the way, there are 3 members of your current board who are Morris College graduates. Quite a contribution. Dr. Barbara Jackson, your chairwoman, as well as Dr. Gloria Lee and Mr. Sean Reagan. But we also have in your district, in our district here, about 10 or so current teachers who are currently teaching in the district, as well as several teachers across our state who are making a wonderful contribution. In addition to that, we do some wonderful things. We have about 47 currently enrolled students at Morris College from the district. 25 from Sumter High, I think about 12 from Lakewood, and 10 from Crestwood. And but we would love for that to be about 150. Because Morris College is ranked number 21 in the South of institutions of higher education that lifts young people out of poverty into the middle class. It's called social mobility, number 21. That is to say that for young people who are students who enter college that need Pell Grants, we do a great job of helping them to lift themselves up, earn a college degree, and be able to sustain themselves in meaningful jobs. We have, in addition to teacher education, we have students out there who are dentists, dietitists, and pharmacists, and lawyers, etc. So we're making a contribution to our community. So I want to say to you very briefly that we love to strengthen our partnership and collaboration, particularly in the teacher education program with the teacher cadet program that you have. We certainly look forward to working with our superintendent to help us strengthen that particular program that we see can be most helpful, as well as the alternative certification program. We think we can be more useful. Of course, we have a teacher training certification program on the college, on our campus, but teacher education are accredited. But we also think we can work with you more closely in collaboration with the alternative certification. And one of the other things about us is we are here to collaborate and serve you and our students in our community better, is we are a quality education, we feel, at an affordable price, just $22,000. That is for a boarding student. So a student can leave the school district, come into Morris College, and what that means is young people do not end up saddled with a whole lot of debt, yet get a quality education right here in the Sumter School District. And two of our wonderful and new programs that we have that makes it much more attractive, very attractive to young people, is our new program in cybersecurity that we are marketing, and we know that the job market is wide open for that, so we will be trying to attract more of your students from the schools into that program, as well as our criminal forensics program, by the way, which is ranked number 16 in the South in terms of quality of education for criminal justice and criminal forensics. So I just want to remind you again that right here in your back door and our back door, as a part of our city, we have an accredited, wonderful institution that provides an awesome, wonderful opportunity for your students as they transition from the district into higher education and into meaningful careers for the future. And I look forward to talking with you and continuing this dialogue with you. And thank you for having me to redirect your attention to a wonderful asset right here in our community that's partnering with the school district. And I've had several conversations with the superintendent, and she and we have committed to continue the dialogue. Thank you so very much.
And so, Dr. Staggers, let me apologize again for unintentionally missing you on the agenda. We appreciate all that you do for our students, and we recognize that the partnership is most important, as our work as educators does not stop after a child graduates or young adult graduates. We need to make sure that there are programs that they can find, and we know that they're right here in our front yard. And so thank you for all the work that you do, and I'll be talking to you soon. Thank you again, Dr. Staggers.
Absolutely. Thank you all. Have a good evening.
And so now it's time for the finance presentation by Ms. Jennifer Miller. I think she's still on the.
She is, when she starts talking, she'll come on.
Okay.
All right, good evening. Sorry, my screen is popping up with antivirus. Okay, good evening, Chairwoman Dr. Barbara Jackson, Vice Chair Dr. Frank Baker, board members, and Superintendent Dr. Mark Knox. This evening, we will go over the school district finances and the budgeting process. Just a quick agenda to talk about, to show you what we're going to talk about. Sorry, Amy, my screen just went crazy. Okay, the items on the agenda are fund accounting, general fund revenues, general fund expenditures, and lastly, the budgeting process. So starting with fund accounting, I just want to give everyone an overview of what fund accounting looks like in the various categories. On the next slide, you will see a flow chart that details what fund accounting looks like. On the top of this, you see the first box is the school district. And then moving down to the second row, you will see that there are 3 fund categories. On the left, you have governmental funds. In the middle, you have proprietary funds. And then over to the right side, you have fiduciary funds. And then moving down the level, you can see starting on the left that we take those governmental funds and break that down into 2 categories. The first one is the general fund. And then the second one, I've just called this other funds for now. I'll show you later what makes up those other funds. I know that everyone is very familiar with the general fund because that is what we discuss each month at the board meetings. But I will go into details on the next slide about those other funds. Moving to the middle, under the proprietary funds, we have what we call our food service funds. That is the only type of proprietary funds that the school district has. And then over to the far right, you will see under the fiduciary funds, we have agency funds.
Now, with each of these fund types, we have funds within those funds, and then we have general ledger accounts. And just a fun fact, the last time I checked, we have over 11,000 general ledger accounts here at Sumter School District. Moving to the next slide, governmental funds. Again, we mentioned the general fund, that is where our operating activities are recorded. And then the other funds, within that category of funds, you have your special revenue funds, your debt service funds, and your capital project funds. So let's start with the general fund. The general fund is used to account for all the financial resources not accounted for in some other fund. So for Sumter School District, what that means, this is where we report our operating activities that are not paid for by the grant funds. Again, I will go into much more detail about the general fund later in the presentation, but this is just a definition of the type of activities that are reported in each of the fund types. Next, the special revenue funds. The special revenue funds are legally required to be spent on specific items, and any funds not spent must be returned to the grantor. As such, there is no change in fund balance, and the revenue will always equal the expenditures. So for Sumter School District, this is where we record all our grants, and we also have the Education Finance Act, which is EIA funding from the state that is recorded in its own special revenue fund. Just another fun fact, last time I checked, we have over 80 special revenue funds. Moving next to the debt service funds. For Sumter School District, the debt service fund is where we record all of our debt transactions. This includes our debt service property tax revenue, along with the debt that we issue or pay during the school year. Each year, Sumter School District is currently issuing a fall and a spring 8% bond that is used to fund capital improvements. And those loans are paid back with the local top tax dollars that are generated and collected. We currently have 4 debt service funds here at Sumter School District. Next, capital project funds. For the Sumter School District, we currently have approximately 8 capital project funds. A new fund is set up with each debt issuance. The capital project budgets are approved by the board, and there are stringent requirements on the type of expenditures in these funds. For example, the items purchased must cost more than $5,000 and have a useful life of greater than 1 year. Just a few examples of the capital project funds that we have going on are your roof repairs, your HVAC replacements, the Chromebooks, desktops, those type of items that the board approves and we fund each year with our debt issuance. Moving to the next slide, proprietary funds, which are the funds to account for activities that involve business-like activities. The only proprietary fund that the school district has is food service funds. We approximately have 10 food service funds at this time. This is where we record the revenue from the United States Department of Agriculture, USDA, and the offsetting food costs. We participate in Community Eligibility Provision, CEP, which means we have a high poverty district and we are allowed to serve breakfast and lunch at no cost to all the enrolled students. To claim those reimbursements for the food costs, we must track which students are served meals each day so that we can submit the supporting documentation to receive payment from the USDA. Additionally, we do have revenue for meals purchased by teachers and staff. Examples of typical expenditures in a food service fund are the food costs, salaries and benefits paid to food service employees, and repairs and maintenance. Lastly, we have the fiduciary funds. This is where Sumter School District reports transactions that occur at the school level, and those funds are called agency funds. We have over 40 agency funds here at the school district. For example, if a student pays a fee or there is a purchase from a canteen, the revenue is recorded in that school's agency fund, and the offsetting expenses are also recorded in this fund. An example would be the cost of the items being sold at the canteen. Please note that the Governmental Accounting Standards Board, GASB, has a new pronouncement that will change the presentation and reporting of these pupil activities in these agency funds, and they will soon be reported as special revenue funds in the near future, which means they will look differently in our audited financial statements and will be audited differently in our statements as well. Okay, moving on to funding. This graph represents the funding of all the fund categories we just talked about for fiscal year 2020. These were pulled straight from the audited financial statements that have already been presented to the board, so this is just showing it in a different format. This details the revenue, which is your light blue bar, your expenditures, which is the dark navy bar, and then other financing sources and uses, which is the brown bar. So starting from the left side there, you will see the tallest section there is the general fund. The revenue in the general fund for fiscal year 20 was approximately $131 million. So the total revenue of all of these funds in this graph was approximately $192 million. So $131 million, or 68%, was recorded in the general fund. The next set of bars is your special revenue funds. These are the ones that are controlled by the grant requirements, and they have to be spent specifically per the grant. That means you can't use it for salaries unless they're built into the grant. They are very detailed on how those funds have to be spent, and if they are not spent accordingly, they must be returned. We have approximately $8.5 million of revenue and expenditures. Again, those have to equal each other. The third set of bars is your debt service revenue. There was $19.5 million of revenue and $11.9 million of expenditures. And this is the one you can really see where there's other financial uses, because it's a negative number, that brown bar section of $11 million. And I'll show you where that money went, but that comes out of the debt service fund. Just keep that in the back of your mind. The next column is the EIA funding from the state that's required to be in a special revenue fund. That's $11.6 million of revenue, and $3.7 million of expenditures, and then the amount that is transferred to the general fund to cover salaries is in the other financial uses. The next column is your food service fund. There's approximately $8.9 million of revenue and approximately $9.2 million of expenditures, which means we had to transfer money from the general funds to cover those expenditures. So there was $713,000 of other financial sources. The second to last set of bars is your capital project funds. Very little revenue in that account. You'll see the expenditures is $6.8 million. That's when we're reporting each month on the capital projects, all your 500 funds, that's where those expenditures are recorded. And then that's where you see that big transfer in of the $11 million. That was the money that came from your debt service fund. It goes over into the capital project funds to fund those projects. And then lastly, to the far right, you have your agency funds. Again, these are the funds that are controlled at the school level, and approximately $2.1 million of revenue and expenditures. So again, in summary, 68% of our funding is reported in the general fund, 10% in special revenue funds and debt service funds, 6% in the EIA fund, 5% in our food service fund, and then lastly, 1% is over in our agency funds. Okay, let's move on to general fund revenue, and the next graph just breaks down a little more what that revenue was. Remember, we talked about $131 million of revenue. So as you can see here, that $33.3 million of that is from our local funding sources. So about 26% comes from our local funding, which the majority of that is our local taxes that are collected. Then the large category is our state revenue, which is about $97 million, or 74% of our revenue comes from the state. And then we do have a tiny bit of federal revenue, which is $400,000. That's our impact aid funding that we received, which was 0.31% of our revenue. So let's talk about EFA funding. This is one of our largest revenue streams of our state revenue, which is Education Finance Act, or EFA. And that act was enacted to achieve school finance reform and was designated to ensure that every child in each public school receives an educational opportunity that meets the state standards. And this funding is based on the 135-day student enrollment on a weighted basis. The board, I'm sure recalls, we had a presentation in the fall that talked about the weightings and the different funding that we would receive based on those weightings. For an example, if a child receives speech therapy, that student has a higher weight, thus resulting in additional revenue for that child to ensure that that child receives the education they deserve, which includes additional services for speech therapy. So on the next slide, you will see what our EFA funding looks like historically. You will see on the far left side, this is a 10-year period from fiscal year 2012 all the way over to fiscal year 21. I do have 21 projected still because we are waiting on the 135th day count for that final adjustment. Right now, it is based on the 45th day count. You can see we're projecting approximately $43 million. Now this revenue, the EFA revenue, will increase as base student costs increase as the state gives us more per student, and it will also increase or decrease depending on the student enrollment. So speaking of base student cost, on the next slide, as I mentioned, the EFA funding is based on that. So this figure, the figure on this graph, these were pulled from the South Carolina Revenue and Fiscal Affairs Office. They had a historical analysis that was updated on January 15th, 2021. So these are very up-to-date figures, and it details from fiscal year 2008 through the projection for fiscal year 2022. Now, I want you to notice that in fiscal year 2009, the base student cost was $2,578. Then we had the impact of the 2008 recession that finally caught up to us. And you can see there, even with our projected $2,500 base student cost next year, we're still not even going to recover from what we lost from that recession. So we just need to keep that in mind as we're dealing with the pandemic right now because of COVID-19. We just need to be mindful of how long a financial impact can have on a school district, because this one has been more than 10 years and we still have not recovered from that, and our base student cost is not back up to the pre-recession figure. Another thing I wanted to talk about for the base student cost, yes, it's projected that that will be $2,500 per student next year, which is an $11 increase per student. There is also another part of that calculation. It's not just taking that number times the number of our students weighted. There's also a local tax paying ability that is built into that calculation. And this year, our local tax paying ability changed from 0.01334 to 0.01346. So what does that mean for us? That means we have more local ability to fund our district, which means in this calculation from the state actually decreases the amount of funding we are going to get because they believe we have the local ability to pay for those expenditures at our district. When I broke the numbers down, if you did not have that change in the local tax paying ability, we would receive approximately $190,000 more next year with this increase of $11 per student. But there is about $100,000 impact on that local tax paying ability. So we're not going to see that, or it's an $89,000 impact. So we're only going to see about a $100,000 increase in revenue next year based on that base student cost increase. Okay, moving down, next, another large revenue stream is our property tax revenue. This is some of our local revenue. I just wanted to provide a chart that details that. Again, these numbers are from our annual audited financial statements. just put it in a bar format for you here. This is for the past 9 years, from fiscal year 2012 through 2020. Now, these figures are gonna fluctuate based on collection and millage rates. The next chart that I have here is the number of mills. This is starting in fiscal year 2012 on the top through the bottom, which is fiscal year 2021. As you can see here, the last millage increase that we truly received was in fiscal year 2016 and 17. That brought us up to 160.1 mills. It does appear that in fiscal year 17, 18, and 18, 19, that it increased, but in fact, our total millage did not increase. We had a swap, which meant the millage that was going to our debt service. We talked about our debt service fund. Some of those millage are charged to that, and that revenue is reported there. So instead of those 10 mills being reported as revenue in the debt service fund, they were actually reported over in the general fund. So there was no change in the total. There was still 220.1 mills. It was a matter of which fund it was reported in. So the last increase was in fiscal year 17. Okay, let's talk about general fund expenditures. There are 4 main categories of expenditures at Sumter School District. We have our salaries and benefits, our supplies and materials, our purchase services, and others. On the pie chart, hopefully Ms. Hanston has caught up to where I am. I know it's hard for me to see. It looks like she has. Okay. These were the total expenditures for fiscal year 2020. There were approximately $123 million spent out of the general fund. So you can see very clearly 91% of our funding, or our expenditures, is on salary and benefits, which equated to $112 million. Then the next category was our supplies and materials, which was $6 million, or 4.5%. The next is our purchase services of $4 million, or 3.3%. And then lastly, the category other, which was approximately $1.1 million, or 0.9%. So let's start with salaries and benefits and break that down a little further. We talked about $112 million was spent on salaries and benefits. So of that, $79 million was on salaries and $33 million was spent on benefits. So benefits include your retirement, your group health insurance, your social security, your workers' compensation, and your unemployment. Right now, retirement for fiscal year 20 in this presentation was at 20.81%. The group health insurance, that's just, it varies depending on the employee. It may be a single person that only has coverage for themselves, or it could be for a family, which would cost more to the district. It's about 12.7% what we pay in salaries is paid on health insurance. Then, of course, your social security is mandated by the federal government, which is 7.65%. Workers' compensation was approximately 0.66% that we paid, and then unemployment was approximately 0.15%. So just to put some dollar figures on that, $16 million was spent on retirement, $10 million on health insurance, $6 million on social security, $500,000 on workers' comp, and $118,000 on unemployment. Okay, on the next graph, this is just looking at the salaries and benefits in a different format. I wanted to break it between instruction and support services. You can see on the left side there, that's what we spend on instructional salaries and benefits. So $51.1 million is on salaries, $21 million on benefits, and then over on support services, it was $28 million on salaries and $12 million on benefits. So approximately 71% is spent on instructional salaries and benefits. Okay, the next category is supplies and materials. So within that category, our utilities such as our electricity, technology and software supplies, textbooks, library books, inventory, etc. If you go to the graph on the next slide, you will see that, the largest category, we did spend almost 5.6 million in fiscal year 20. That was actually 1.1 million less than fiscal year 19, so we had already, decreased our expenditures significantly in this category. The largest portion to the far left there in the light blue is spent on electricity. So of the 5.6 million, 3.7 is spent on electricity. The next largest category is your supplies at 1.6 million, followed by textbooks at 93,000, followed by technology and software at 87,000, and then lastly, 19,000 is in the last category. And please note that textbooks, no, I already talked about textbooks, I apologize. Okay, next. Purchase services. This category, I'm not gonna run through this whole list for you, but just please note that the largest category of purchase services is our property insurance here at the school district. On the next slide, there's a chart again detailing out how much is spent in each of those categories that was on the previous page. So there was approximately $4 million that was spent. Again, that was down $700,000 from the prior year. Again, strategically reducing expenditures. The largest of this $4 million is $854,000 on property insurance. The next largest category is $676,000 on rental expenses. Those are for our copier machines. The next is repairs and maintenance of $616,000, and I'm not gonna go into all the detail, but just know on the far right, the last category, other, had $4,000 in that category. Okay, the last category of expenditures is other. I know that sounds like a very vague category, but the State Department does have it detailed out what is put into this category. It's pupil activity, it's debt principal and interest payments, dues and fees, transits, and other. So on the chart that you see here, the far left of the 1.1 million spent, the largest was our transit, which is 349,000. And so transit represents transactions that flow through in nature. This is where payments that we have to make to the State Department of Education are recorded, or to any other governmental agencies. The next category was pupil activity, approximately 349,000. These are funds related to the school-sponsored and interscholastic student activities. The next category is your debt principal. We paid approximately 181,000. The bar in green represents the dues and fees, which was approximately 87,000, followed by interest of 60,000. And again, there's more figures to the right, but you can see those and look at those at your leisure. So lastly, we're gonna talk about the budgeting process. So how do we even start that? The first step in the budget process is to perform our needs assessment. We have already started that for fiscal year 22's budget. It starts with the Human Resources and Finance Department meeting together to discuss and calculate the teacher to student ratios. I do believe there's a typo in the PDF copy that the board has. It said teacher to staff ratios, but that is actually teacher to student ratios. The next item that we move on to is where our executive team meets with each principal to discuss their school-specific needs. We meet with every principal. Then I meet with each department head and we discuss those departments' needs. And then followed by a public hearing to obtain input from our community. So when we talk about enrollment and what we were projecting for this year, on this slide, you can see our average daily membership based on the 135th day, with the exception of fiscal year 21, that again is based on the 45th day. So this shows from 2015 through 2021 what our enrollment has been that we are funded for. We had 16,340 students at the far left of this graph, and then to the far right, we were projecting 15,217 students for this year. When we did look at our numbers, when we did our teacher to student ratios, again, the numbers are a little skewed this year because of COVID, but they were very much in line, with the 15,217 approximate increase of 26 students, maybe 15,243. Okay, the next part of budgeting is to prepare, what we think the revenue is gonna look like. So we have already received preliminary numbers from the State Department for fiscal year 22. Again, they showed, the increase based on the, base student costs, they had that in there. They also include what they're gonna give us for the teacher step increase. And then they have various other items that will either go up or down based on their calculations. So overall, next year, from the State Department, it looks like we will see an increase of $700,000. Tier 3, which is some of our state tax revenue that we collect, that is projected to increase $390,000. So right now, based on those two known figures, I do anticipate that our revenue will go up $1.1 million. Now, obviously, one big part of the revenue projection is going to be our tax revenue. I have met, I had one discussion virtually with the county, talking about the value of the mill. We are currently evaluating the execution reports that were run in March, and we are waiting on the assessor for any potential growth factors. Areas we need to consider this year include the impact from the pandemic on the real estate and any collection issues that we might have related to property taxes. So we are still working on that as we continue to go forward in the budget process. So then moving over to projection of expenditures. This is what I know so far. These are some of the mandated increases. So this is something we can't control. We have to find a way to pay for this. So the teacher step increase, I think that's approximately $1 million. There is a 1% retirement increase that equates to approximately $820,000. And then health insurance for the district is gonna increase 0.8%, which is approximately $100,000. Another thing we have to keep in mind, we have grant funds that pay for things, but if that grant funding goes away, the general fund has to be prepared to cover those expenditures, or we have to discontinue whatever services that grant is paying for. We currently have international teachers that are funded with our SARA funds. If that grant funding goes away, and we don't know year to year what we're gonna receive for that, we need to be prepared to cover probably approximately, we have $300,000 built in the budget, but I think we probably need another $200,000 to make sure we can cover that. So of the known things right now, I know that we need to come up with $2.1 million of additional expenditures. So we just talked about, you go to the next slide, so what happens now? Now we make adjustments. So we know that revenue's gonna go up, which was great news of 1.1 million. The bad news is we also know expenses are gonna go up. Those are just the mandated expenses. I haven't even built in any of the principal needs, department needs, or just any prices increasing just based on cost of living. So right now, we're looking at a shortfall of $1 million that we need to be prepared and to balance our budget, figure out how we're going to reduce expenditures by $1 million to cover for the revenue that we're anticipating to receive. Again, I do not know what the tax from local taxes is gonna do, so I do need to build that into the calculation as well. But just wanted to give you an overview of where we stand right now and just give you some background on funding and how things are structured at a school district. And at this time, I will take any questions that the board has. I know that was a lot of information.
Are there any questions? Yes.
Madam Chair, this question is probably better suited for Dr. Mark Knox. Approximately how many international teachers do we currently have in the district?
That number fluctuates. Jennifer, I don't believe you have the numbers. Dr. Kuhn is on the call. The question is, how many international teachers do we have? I don't think you know the answer. I think Dr. Kuhn knows that answer.
Yeah, I do not know how many international teachers we have off the top of my head.
And we changed that view. Dr. you.
I'm not exactly sure of the number. I can get that for you in the next minute or two.
Any additional questions while Dr. Cummings is looking for that? You have another question?
Yes.
Mr.
I may follow up. Ms. Miller, when you were giving this report, you stated that majority of our funding comes from the state, but it's also dependent upon our local revenue. So is it, I guess to simplify that, is it a balancing act between the state and local funding that we see when it comes to school district funding?
Sorry, I can't hear, Dr.
So the conversation we always engage in terms of the portion that school districts are funded by the state versus those that are funded by the local tax base or the local the local revenue. He wants to know, how do we come up with the figures? Is it a balancing act, or how does that work? And we've talked about that time and time again. Did you hear me?
Yes, I heard you, and if I'm understanding the question, it's knowing how much funding we get from the state versus the local and how we spend those dollars. So typically, we build a balanced budget, which means everything that we get from the state and the local is going to be spent. There are certain things that the state has to pay for, but that's more on the grant side of things, so it's really just building a balanced budget, and what dollars you have available for the expenditures in the general fund.
Did that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Are there any additional questions? I think Dr. Cummings is still looking.
Is there another question that I didn't hear?
No, we were waiting for Dr. Kumis to pull the numbers.
Oh, okay.
Do you want Dr. Faber to pose the question?
I think he has,
Yes,
I
ma'am.
think he has some questions.
It's sort of twofold in light of the information Dr. Hilton presented. Coming back to Dr. Mark Knox, are you far, and you may not be far enough along on this, looking at what the state is moving to towards virtual instruction versus face-to-face instruction is one component that the teachers would have to be paid additional monies if they're doing virtual. Have we looked at the possibility, if we are going to offer virtual to our parents for the next school year, having a virtual academy? So our teachers will be assigned to that virtual academy, and they won't be doing dual virtual versus face-to-face.
Yes, sir, and that's a good question. We're actually looking at the advantages and the benefits to children and to our staff by offering virtual. We began preliminary work, and we were looking at about 1.8 million for doing so. And most of the districts that are offering virtual and in person, they have their virtual academies, and they're hiring teachers outside of their normal teacher personnel that's on the contracts. So they're actually going with an external agency to find teachers to fulfill that responsibility. But we continue to have that dialogue in terms of the virtual options and opportunities that we can present for the, you're talking about for the fall too, I didn't just jump, assuming, yes, for the fall, yes, sir, we've continued to have that dialogue. And looking at how it can be done, placement of adults in terms of teaching staff, administrative staff that is needed to fulfill those responsibilities, because there still would be a need for accountability. So we continue to have that dialogue.
All right, and what timeline are we looking at? And the reason I'm asking that, several of our surrounding districts are already sending out notification to parents about how it's gonna work and all of that. So do we have a timeline when we can make the announcement to our parents, or does, you can bring it to the board can discuss it, approve it, or whatever, and then follow it up with an announcement rather than getting way on over into the summer?
Yes, sir. We plan to have something before the year concludes, and most of my colleagues in other districts have already operated with a virtual academy, so it's not a new approach for them. They've been doing it for years. We have not. We've done online, we've done e-learning, but we've not had an actual academy designated for a cadre of teachers and students to learn from. So we've, again, looked to see if we keep those teachers in their assigned schools, or if we find a continued space where they could share. It would actually be in a separate school. Looking at the ability to fund that, you know, it adds more complexities to the 1.8, but we have talked about having teachers remain in their schools and just meeting the needs of those children that are designated or zoned for that school. But yeah, but I just had a conversation right before spring break with about 8 of my colleagues in the Midlands area, and many of them already had a virtual academy. They're just continuing to open and offer more opportunities for children. But yes, we continue to have those conversations regarding moving forward.
And this is sort of twofold too, with part of Ms. Miller's presentation. And we're looking at the budget timeline. Determine standard staffing sizes. Is it the intent of the district to reduce that student-teacher ratio?
We are planning to make sure that we can maintain what we have, and we want to have smaller class sizes, but because our enrollment has declined, actually our enrollment should be taking a slight incline right now, but we are looking to make sure that we are able to maintain manageable class sizes. And there is a student-to-teacher ratio that we've had to use in terms of a formula for schools, and many of our schools have been, before the pandemic, they were right at the bubble, right? They were right at the cusp of just imploding. And so that's why it's important for us to unfreeze some of the positions that were frozen as we continue to move forward, and or not reducing the staff based on the reduction in student enrollment.
Okay, because if you look at your numbers from that chart, we've lost over 1,000 kids. And so, and I guess what I'm driving at is, we've lost that many kids. How is that impacting the need of our teachers if we have established a ratio of 20 to 1 or 12 to 1 or whatever? How is that impacting our needs for teachers? And sort of a follow-up to that is, when you met with the principals, are there additional requests for additional teachers in their schools?
So we finished those meetings, and I don't think there was a lot for teachers. There was more for emotional support, like counselors and support services, but there was a lot of requests for facility enhancements, more so. We don't have a compounded list yet, but there weren't a lot of administrative requests for staffing. So we continue to monitor the numbers quite regularly, and with the number of resignations we have coming in for various reasons, our teaching staff is decreasing as well. So with the number of students we've lost, some of those positions may not be filled because of attrition, but other than that, we plan to keep our teacher and student ratio at the most feasible, manageable area.
Okay, thank you.
Jennifer, when I just shared that response, most of the requests, or Dr. Hafner, most of the requests from our principals, they weren't about staffing this year, correct?
The majority were, like you mentioned, for the emotional support, but there were a couple of schools that did request teachers, and we were hoping that with some of the attrition, we would move some folks around. We did have a couple of schools that were in need based on the numbers.
And so some of them were actually in need last year, but again, because of the decrease in student enrollment, it kind of balanced them out. But there's still a few, not many, maybe about 3, I think. John, you and I talked about 3 today, maybe, where we were planning to shift some individuals around to balance out staff. So John, you turned, I'm assuming you have the number?
Yes, ma'am, 24 international teachers.
Annie? Yes.
Yes, ma'am. Dr. Mark Knox, you alluded that we should see an uptick in our student enrollment. Is that attributed to the return to face-to-face instruction, or?
We actually had requests, and one of the things that I've said, we've actually had students who went to other places, and I'm not going to specify the places they went, And what they've asked to do is to come back, and we've allowed them to re-enroll. And so many of them were not a part of when the principals did the survey to determine who was going to be virtual, who's going to be it was before then. And so there were several. I think we had a family that showed up right before spring break, Amy, right, with 2 or 3 kids. They went to another schooling site, and they weren't happy and they wanted to come back. And so we granted them the return back. So we will monitor the data. We don't have the numbers for today because today was the first time we've had face-to-face for elementary, 4 days. 4 days for elementary. We're going to continue to monitor those numbers to see where we are. But most of the students we've had return, they went somewhere else and they've returned back. And I will just share, many of them were students who were many of them were on open enrollment prior to leaving. What I've asked staff to do is if they left and they were in a school in open enrollment, instead of sending them to their zone school, to allow them to return back to the school where they had been given original permission for open enrollment. And the reason I wanted it to remain that way, if we have a student who started in Sumter School District and then they went to School District B or School B, and if they came back and we then told them, no, you can't come back in open enrollment, you have to go back to your zone school, that would be 3 transitions for a child. That's unfair. And so we allowed those children to return back to the school where they attended prior to their withdrawal for whatever the reason may have been. Because again, I didn't want that many disruptions in the life of a child. And so that's how I know, because many of them called in advance to ask that they return back to the school where they were.
Thank you.
A follow-up question may be from Dr. Baker. What are we going to do with the choices? You can be virtual or in person, but suppose there are some students that will say virtual, but when they were virtual, they weren't getting online. Have we looked at what we're going to do and whether or not we're going to allow those options to students that have not been fulfilling their obligations? Because I know that we have a lot of students out there that were supposed to have been virtual and they don't do anything.
So we will continue to, it's just as if they were face-to-face. We will follow the process and provide support to determine, first of all, why the child's not coming to school. And if there's something that we can provide support with that family on, we will do so. But if not, then we will follow through with our attendance coordinator to make sure that we're reporting them and getting them and holding them accountable, shall I say. So yes, we have. I will give compliments to our school-based staff and our leaders. They recognize and know their children when they're not online, or even when they're online and not benefiting. They've actually been reaching out to the parents and saying it's best that if Ms. Ray came to school because these are the things that we've noticed. And there are some who are coming to school now, and there are some who are just still online. But we are holding individuals accountable if they are not, if children aren't participating. We've done school visits, home visits. We've asked for police assistance to do wellness checks for our children, just to find out sometimes the reason why. And oftentimes when the house is visited, there's no one who lives there. So then we're trying to find where those children have gone to. So there's a lot going on with that. And so that's why it was important for us to have an attendance coordinator who was active in not just disciplining or putting in a sanction on parents and families for not sending children to school, but really getting underneath the why they're not coming to school. And whatever that reason may be, providing them with support. And so we continue to look, we continue to search, and then, we have families who are homeless, and they're not identified as homeless under the McKinney-Vento laws, because many of them don't really know what that means. So, we're trying to do everything we possibly can. Even research, right? We look at research. If you Google many of the numbers of students we're losing, Sumter School District is in the midst with other school districts across the nation. And so it has provided additional levels of complexities to the work in making sure children are present in school and learning. So we're trying to combat it in any and every which way we possibly can.
Thank you. Any additional questions? If not, we'd like to thank Dr. Mark Knox and I know Dr. Staggers is not there anymore. And I know Mrs. Miller, as well as Mr. Myers assisted in the presentation. We'd like to thank all of those that contributed under the tour of Sumter, as well as the finance. If there are.
Review the budget timeline. She still needs to review the budget timeline.
Oh, you still have another, I'm getting like.
That's okay, no, don't blame me.
She set the tone for me.
I did, it's my
All right. I'm sorry, Mrs. Miller, you haven't finished, but we would like to thank all of those that have thus far contributed.
All right, the budget timeline is in front of you. Obviously, some of these dates have already passed, and we've marked those items as completed already. But if you start looking from, let's see, today is April 12th. This was the initial discussion with the board. And then you can see going forward, the items, and we just are bringing this to the board. We confirmed with the county today that May 18th would work with their schedule to present, our budget to county council. So those are the dates, and that would be the final approval by our board on our June 14th, board meeting.
Madam Chair, I have one question.
Yes.
Ms. Miller, in meeting with the department heads, and this may be Dr. Martin Knox's question rather than yours, I know last year we discussed looking at a minimum number of students enrolled in a class to keep that class in place. Did we discuss that when we met the principals this year, and did we set a minimum of saying you've got to have at least 10 kids to offer a class, or 12 kids, or anything like that?
We did not discuss that in our budget meeting specifically, and I don't know if Dr. Martin Knox has any more information on that.
No,
as
we-
far as
we-
programs.
Thank you, no, we did not look at the singletons. We just looked at where they were based on their assessment of student enrollment for the upcoming school year. They also took into account trends, because they'll talk about the enrollment and how it fluctuates every year. Of course, they know what their trends are, but in terms of our one-off classes, there are some schools that are strategically mixing kids where they possibly can, so that we eliminate those classes with 3, 4, 5, 10 kids in. Because what it does is, if one class has 10, then another class has to have 40. So there has to be a balance with those classes. But there are some other options for us to have those conversations, particularly as it pertains to the building of a schedule. We can better monitor that and have those discussions when necessary.
And a follow-up to that is have the counselors now registered all the kids for their classes for the next school year?
So I'm not gonna say they've registered them all. I can say that the registration process has begun. Ms. Davis, you wanna jump in there?
Yes, the registration process has begun. Counselors have been meeting with students virtually and in person for the GED.
Good. And what you said about balancing, we have a lot of, and I don't know if all the board members had an opportunity to look at this information I requested last year, where you've got the same classes, and this class has got 10 and that one's got 40 or whatever. It is a simple task for the guidance counselors balancing those classes. And someone has to supervise that, and basically I would hold the principal accountable for supervising that. Even Ms. Davis is at the district level, but that principal is there, and it's a simple matter of balancing the classes. And that's a little bit of work, but it's easy enough to be done, and you won't have those disproportionate numbers.
And so this is the importance of making sure the team does not work in silos, because this would be a partnership with Dr. Kunis, with Dr. Hafner, and Ms. Davis and Jada McLeod, just to make sure the courses are aligned with what is expected from South Carolina, especially when we're counting student credits, and making sure that our counselors are fulfilling their roles and responsibilities, and then with the accountability with principals with Dr. Hafner.
Any additional?
And as Ms. Miller shared to the Finance Committee, there was one adjustment to the timeline when we originally showed it to you, and that change actually occurred probably about 4 hours ago. And that's when we conferred with the county council of the budget council meeting for the 18th. Originally, it was scheduled for like the 25th. but today we confirmed it's the 18th, so I just wanted to bring that change to your attention based on the adjustment since the last time the Finance Committee saw this.
That the end of your,
Yes, ma'am.
any additional questions about anything we've covered already? If not, we are now ready at this portion of the agenda. It calls for the executive session, and I want to take this opportunity to thank you, our viewers, for your virtual attendance. While there is no designated time for how long we will be in executive session, we hope that you are with us when we return. However, if you are unable to be with us at that time, let us wish you a safe and good week. Is there a motion to enter into executive session? Executive session items, the individual student material matters and transfers. Dr. Mark Knox.
Yes, ma'am. Dr. Jackson, I would offer the board to approve the student transfer in and out of district as discussed in executive session.
Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion to approve the superintendent's recommendation for the individual student matters or transfers as discussed in executive session.
Second.
A motion has been made and second to approve the superintendent recommendation for the individual student matter transfers. Is there any questions or discussion? Please cast your votes electronically.
It's unanimous.
The motion passes unanimously. Dr. Martin Knox, do you have a recommendation for the personnel report?
Yes, ma'am. I recommend that the board send a formal complaint to the South Carolina, Board of Education, requesting that the appropriate action be taken against employee B, a professional employee of Sumter School District, who, pursuant to South Carolina Code, annotated section 59-25-530, breached her employment contract with the district and failed to report to work.
That was not the first one. So you wanna go back to the first one after that?
All right, is there a motion to support the superintendent's recommendation?
Madam Chair, I move that the superintendent's recommendation be supported.
Second.
A motion has been made and a second to approve the superintendent's recommendation that the board send a formal complaint to the South Carolina Board of Education requesting that appropriate action be taken against employee B, a professional employee of Sumter School District who, pursuant to South Carolina Code annotated section 59-25-530, breached her employment contract with the district and failed to report to work. Is there any discussion?
I just need to know the, maker of the motion and the second, please.
I made it.
Baker made it.
I second it.
Austin second.
Thank you.
Any discussion? If not, please cast your votes electronically. Which one are we going to? Colors number 4.
You ready to go back to the first one?
Did it pass?
Yes, I'm sorry. Okay. Unanimously.
The motion passes unanimously. Dr. Martin Knox, do you have a recommendation for the personnel report?
Yes, ma'am. I recommended that the board approve the April personnel report as presented in executive session.
Is there a motion?
I'd like to make a motion to support superintendent's recommendation.
Second.
A motion has been made and second to approve the superintendent's recommendation for the April personnel report.
I did not catch who did the second.
Dr. Lee.
Is there any discussion? Please cast your vote electronically.
That is unanimous.
The motion passes unanimously. Dr. Mark Knox, do you have another recommendation for the personnel report?
Yes, ma'am. I'm recommending that the board adopt the contract, that the contract of employee C, induction contract employee, not be renewed for the 2021-2022 school year pursuant to section 59-26-40 of the South Carolina Code of Laws.
Is there a motion?
Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion to approve the superintendent's recommendation that the contract of employee C, induction contract employee not be renewed for the 2021-2022 school year pursuant to section 59-26-40 of the South Carolina Code of Laws.
Second.
Is that, I'm sorry with the math, I can't tell who's.
Austin and Reagan.
Second.
Thank you.
A motion has been made and second to approve the superintendent's recommendation that the contract of employee C, induction contract employee, not be renewed for the 2021 through 2022 school year pursuant section 59-26-40 of the South Carolina Code of Law. Is there any discussion? Please cast your vote electronically.
That is unanimous.
The motion passes unanimously. Dr. Mark Knox, do you have another recommendation for the personnel report?
Yes, ma'am. It is my recommendation that the contract of employee D, induction contract employee, not be renewed for the 2021-22 school year pursuant to section 59-26-40 of the South Carolina Code of Laws.
Is there a motion?
Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion to approve the superintendent's recommendation that the contract of employee D, induction contract employee, not be renewed for the 2021-2022 school year pursuant to section 59-26-40 of the South Carolina Code of Laws.
Second.
A motion has been made and second to approve the superintendent recommendation that the contract of employee D, induction contract employee, not be renewed for the 2021-2022 school year pursuant to section 59-26-40 of the South Carolina Code of Laws. Is there any discussion? Please cast your vote electronically.
Nothing's coming up on mine.
It says you already voted though.
Be careful. Be careful, Amy.
Don't touch your screen.
The motion passes unanimously. Dr. Mark Knox? Do you have any other, personnel recommendation?
Yes, ma'am. As superintendent, I'm recommending that the board conditionally accept the non-renewal of employment of a continuing contractual teacher, employee E, subject to the board's duty to review the matter on the merits pursuant to state law, should the individual request a hearing.
Is there a motion?
Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion to approve the superintendent's recommendation that the board conditionally accept the non-renewal of employment of a continuing contract teacher, employee, subject to the board's duty to review the matter on the merits pursuant to the state law should the individual request a hearing.
Second.
A motion has been made and second to approve the superintendent's recommendation that the board conditionally accept the non-renewal of employment of a continuing contract teacher, employee A, subject to the board's duty to review the matter on the merits pursuant to state law, should the individual request a hearing. Is there any discussion?
It's employee.
Employee.
It's E.
I'm sorry, what did I say?
A.
I'm sorry, employee A, thank you.
Employee
Employee E. I'm looking at E and saying, it's employee E. Thank you for the, correction. Let the record show it's employee E.
Everything good?
Yeah, I voted, I promise you. I voted. It appeared up and I hit yay. It didn't show.
Sure,
It did?
sure. Yes.
I'm blaming it on technology.
Okay, the motion passes unanimously. Dr. Mark Knox, do you have another recommendation for the personnel report?
Yes, ma'am. It is recommended that the board conditionally accept the non-renewal of employment of a continuing contract teacher, employee F, subject to the board's duty to review the matter on the merits pursuant to the state law should the individual request a hearing.
Is there a motion?
Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion to approve the superintendent's recommendation that the board conditionally accept the non-renewal of employment of a continuing contract teacher, employee F, subject to the board's duty to review the matter on the merits pursuant to state law should the individual request a hearing.
Is there?
Second.
Can we have a second? All right, a motion has been made and second to approve the superintendent's recommendation that the board conditionally accept the non-renewal of employment of a continuing contract teacher, employee F, subject to the board's duty to review the matter on the merit pursuant to state law, should the individual request a hearing. Is there any discussion? Please cast your vote electronically.
Is unanimous, Dr. Jackson?
The motion passes unanimously.
9.4?
Okay, Dr. Mark Knox, do you have a recommendation for the personnel contract?
Yes, ma'am. It is recommended that the board approve the 2021-2022 personnel contracts as discussed in executive session.
Is there a motion?
Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion to approve the superintendent's recommendation for the 2021-2022 personnel contracts as discussed in executive session.
Second.
A motion has been made and second to approve the superintendent's recommendation that the board approve the 2021-2022 personnel contract. Is there any discussion? Please cast your votes electronically.
Unanimous.
The motion passes unanimously. We're now down to 9.5, board committee, public members, trustees, Trustees, is there a motion to approve the nominees for public members to serve on the board's committees?
Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion to approve the nominees for public members to serve on the board's committees.
Second.
A motion has been made and second to approve the public members' nominees
No, you just
for
jump
board
on me.
committees. Is there any discussion? Please cast your votes.
And also, as you know,
The motion passes unanimously. 9.6, Trustees, is there a motion to approve the RFPs for audit services?
Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion to approve the RFPs for audit services and the selection of the firm of Maudlin and Jenkins.
Second.
A motion has been made and second to approve the RFP for the audit service and selection of Mulder Jenkins. Is there any discussion? Please cast your vote electronically.
as you know,
The motion passes unanimously. We're now down to the consent agenda. Are there any objections to the approval of the consent agenda? Hearing none, the consent agenda is approved. And on behalf of the Board of Trustees, it is our pleasure to have for you to have joined us tonight. We ask for your continued support, and we appreciate your commitment to our school district, our staff, our students, our parents, and our community. Please continue to practice social distancing, wear your masks, be safe, and join us when we meet again. Have a great evening and a blessed week. No further business. This meeting is adjourned at 8:53.
Very efficient tonight. Thank you.